It was a dark and stormy night when your humble host sequestered himself in his subterranean lair to bring you the tale of yet another horror classic in a vain and transparent attempt to cash in on the remake's impending release. I'm, of course, referring to The Invisible Man from 1933, which is receiving a remake, which is going to be released the day after I upload this video. Now, The Invisible Man is a 1933 Universal film starring Claude Rains as the titular Invisible Man, Dr. Jack Griffin. And as the movie begins, he goes to an inn in the English countryside during a terrible snowstorm, and he immediately is greeted with suspicion by all of the patrons of the bar that is ran in the main part of the inn, because he is wrapped from head to toe. His face is covered in gauze. He's wearing gloves, a heavy coat, and goggles, and what is very clearly a fake nose protruding from the front of his face, but no one seems to mention that. And he gets a room at this inn from the barkeep and his wife, who are a very nice Cockney British couple that act as the comic relief for this this beginning portion of the film, mostly just because the wife is constantly screaming her head off in the most high-pitched voice possible. But Dr. Griffin sequesters himself in his room because in his pursuit of scientific advancement, he has turned himself invisible, and he is now trying to keep away from the prying eyes of the public while he works on a cure to turn himself visible again. But in going off to do this research, he abandoned his boss, Dr. Cranley, and his co-worker, Cranley's other lab assistant, Dr. Kemp, and also his fiancée, who happens to be the daughter of Dr. Cranley, whose name is Flora. So none of these people have seen Jack in months. He's been missing. They're just getting around to being worried about it. And Flora really wants Cranley, her father, and Kemp to go look for Jack, to go investigate his house, see what they can find. And Kemp is not that worried about it because he just wants to steal Flora from Jack. But of course, Jack, Dr. Griffin, does not know this, but the side effect of the concoction he made to turn himself invisible is that it also turns the person who injects it insane. And this is exposited to us through Dr. Cranley, who says, there was this experiment they did in Germany where they turned a bunch of dogs white, but then the dogs also went mad. So it's implied that the monocaine, which is what the made-up chemical is called, that turns Jack invisible, is some derivative of this, and he's going to go crazy as well. And of course, he does end up going crazy. He gets mad at the inn staff, who are constantly barging in on him and messing up his experiments. So he reveals himself to be invisible to them, and then strips butt-ass naked to where you can't see him at all, and goes on a rampage through this village where he's running around and he's breaking windows and stealing bicycles and knocking over baby carriages. Excuse me. So this draws the attention of the police, who at first are trying to accuse the entire town of being crazy or suffering from some mass delusion, until Jack, in attempting to escape, tries or succeeds in killing the police chief, or the head investigator, which then sparks a national manhunt where there are giant search parties of people going off into the British countryside to try and find him, which, since he's invisible, essentially amounts to a bunch of people just kind of walking around in the woods, swinging sticks around in front of them, and kind of poking at things with sticks, hoping that they will swing the stick and hit the Invisible Man just by chance. And of course, they do not find him using this manner of searching, and Jack goes on a crazy rampage throughout the country. He kills people in the search party. He throws them off a cliff. He causes a train to crash off the rails, and he actually robs a bank, which that's one of the more unbelievable scenes, because no one in the bank notices the big drawer of cash just kind of floating away as he invisibly carries it out the front door, and then throws it all on the streets, causing this big, rush to the ground to get all the money. But of course, it is the middle of winter in England, presumably based on the snow in the beginning, so he can't run around naked forever. So he decides to actually go to Dr. Kemp's house, and explains to Kemp that he is going to make him his accomplice, because he needs a visible man to conduct business, go buy groceries and take care of other stuff for him, while he does all the dastardly world domination stuff while being invisible. And he assures Kemp that if he doesn't double-cross him, then nothing will come bad to Kemp. And he refers to them as bosom friends, as opposed to bosom buddies, which I thought was nice. But of course, Kemp does end up betraying Griffin again, or does end up betraying him, rather. So Griffin again has to strip naked and escape into the countryside, but he vows to come back and kill Kemp. So it's now a cat-and-mouse game between the police, who are trying to protect Kemp and use him as bait to get the Invisible Man, and Griffin, who is trying to evade capture but also come back and kill Dr. Kemp, which he does end up doing by essentially waiting out the police and evading all of their methods, and then just camping out in the back of Kemp's car when he tries to escape, and then beating the shit out of him, tying him up, and once he's tied up, making the car drift off of a cliff. Which, if you looked closely, you could tell they were using a miniature, but it's still a really good set piece, because especially for the 30s, it looks really realistic, and there's a cool explosion and all that. But unfortunately, after exacting his revenge on Dr. Kemp, Griffin finds himself in the same situation where he is again forced to run off and hide somewhere naked. And after all this, he's tuckered out, so he decides to lay low in a barn and take a nap. And just then it begins to snow, where they would be able to see him, his footprints and everything. And it just so happens that the farmer that owns the property comes in, hears a person snoring in his barn, and goes and tells the police, who surround the barn and light it on fire. And when Jack tries to escape, they see his footprints in the snow. They all open fire, and he drops to the ground. Or you see an indent in the snow where he's dropped to the ground. And he is transported to the hospital, where he gets to talk to Flora for one last time before he dies and turns visible, just so that Claude Rains could actually be seen in the movie. Because this is, I think, one of the only movies where the leading actor is in a live-action film, but gets almost no screen time. He's only using his voice to act. Yeah, so overall, I really enjoyed this movie. The special effects, which are kind of the main centerpiece of the movie, hold up really well, considering the movie's from 1933. This was, of course, before the invention of, green screens. So how they would have to do it was they would make Claude Rains perform the scenes in, a full-body black velvet unitard against a black background, and then they would splice that footage into the existing scene that was being performed on the actual set. So that since you have the black on black, once you splice the film together, the actor, Claude Rains, would appear invisible. And there are some scenes in the movie where they had to do this keying in process from like 4 or 5 different angles, and then splice all of the film reels together to get the intended effect, because you'd have like him being invisible in the mirror or something like that. It's overall really enjoyable. It was a Universal picture, so as far as movies back in the 30s go, you couldn't really beat that. Really well shot, beautiful set design, all that, everything you'd expect from a Universal picture. So overall, I really enjoyed it, and I am actually looking forward to the remake, which comes out here in a day or so. So I will go see that, and I'll let y'all know what I think. And if you want to see that video, please subscribe, leave a like and a comment, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Thank you.